Deion Sanders is catching heat once again because he told a player that they needed to transfer during the offseason. Then the player didn't. And now that ex-player is saying that Prime never gave him a chance during the spring and that he was, quote, almost in tears because Prime never put him out there. You know, it's about time we get something straight, and I haven't really heard anybody else out there say it, so I'm going to go ahead. College football isn't a daycare. All right? It's a very competitive and lucrative business. Now, if a new coach comes in, or if a coach gives you the heads up that your best interest is probably to transfer, and you don't, well, that's on you. You don't have a right to reps. They're earned. And players want it in the business. And they got their wish. In fact, they're getting even more than they asked for. And they need to learn, and young people in general, that there's two sides to being in the business. You don't always get your way, Marie Antoinette. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Life isn't fair. You can't cry about wanting in the business, then cry because you don't like the negative side of it. You can get paid to play now, even on top of a full ride scholarship. Not only that, you're getting paid as an 18-year-old. You're open to criticism if you don't perform well. It's the way the world works. If the high schooler who runs the cash register at the Chick-fil-A gets told they aren't doing a good job, then the 18-year-old wide receiver who's getting paid should be open to the exact same criticism. That's life. And to be honest, it's a pretty damn good life lesson as well for some of these young people. If your boss says you're not going to get any hours due to poor performance, you should probably go find another job. It happens in every other walk of life because this is the real world. Now, it's amazing those 18-year-olds who stormed the beaches of Normandy during World War II didn't complain nearly as much as this soft generation of individuals that we have today. Child actors get their performances graded, and graded pretty harshly. I don't see them moaning or complaining as much as some of these players today. We have to stop treating people who are entering adulthood and getting financially rewarded like little babies. It's not good for them or society. Now, some say, well, every player's not getting paid. Well, buddy, that's the cost of your peers wanting in the business, and nobody is forcing you to play. If you don't like it, then leave. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go be a dick about it or criticize just for the fun of it, but acting like these 18-year-olds and up are beyond critique and can get paid but not criticize is a practice in futility. It's one of the reasons that so many young adults have a warped view of the world because they never get told no and they never get told you didn't do a good job. Now, most coaches are going to defend their guys at all costs because they have to. They're with them every day, and it's the smart thing. But the best thing you can do for a young person is to tell them the truth. Now, do I love the way that Deion Sanders goes about it sometimes? I don't, but he isn't wrong. And maybe if more people took those same steps, we wouldn't have the situations we see today all over college campuses. So you wanted in the business, and now you're in it. So if you can't handle the heat, then get your ass out of the kitchen. And like one of my favorite coaches used to say, go ahead and quit. I'm sure your mom will still love you. I'm going to go ahead and bring in David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, my brother, former Western State Colorado wide receiver, Blake Crane. It's in every other walk of life, David. Whether you're 16 years old, cutting somebody's grass, you screw up, they're going to tell you didn't do a good job, they may not pay you. The fact that we treat 18-year-olds like they're 9-year-olds is the reason that we find ourselves in this situation societally right now. But it's not all young people, and I do want to make this point quickly. There are young people out there that work and grind and get critiqued and rise through adversity. And those people, you should be smiling because your competition is trash right now with the way some of these young people handle critique and handle having to work. Yeah. Please don't cry to me as an 18-year-old when you look around the rest of the world and see what some of those 18-year-olds are having to do with. I'm sick of looking at it. I'm sick of listening to it, and I'm sick of watching these adults get treated like babies.
Well, I think you hit some very important points there that extend far beyond just college football. And a large part of it, too, is social media and parents using social media as a babysitter. And I don't think COVID helped at all when you had, especially 12, 13, 14-year-olds couldn't leave their house and they all had to be inside on social media even longer. The one thing that I'll say is just from the idea that everything you're talking about also isn't new. College football didn't just become a business whenever the kids could profit off name, image, and likeness. I'm telling you, I played from 2006 to 2010. it was very much a business. And I wasn't just playing out of the graciousness of my own heart, right? Like if you're not playing football for all the right reasons, it will chew through you and spit you out. Like you have to be there because you are seeing an opportunity to get better in life, to be more punctual, to be more disciplined. And yes, at the end of the tunnel, I thought I was going to be a multimillionaire. Didn't all of us at one point think that we were going to hit the game-winning home run or the game winner in Game 7, you know, for a home run, or throw the touchdown pass or have the winning dunk? All of us wanted to be professional athletes. So we had that motivation as well. But at the same time, I guess I was just fortunate to grow up with a father, and you guys the same way, who kind of prepared me for what was coming and basically saying, hey, at some point in your life, you're either going to have a coach yelling at you, a wife yelling at you, a boss yelling at you. So I'm just going to do it now. So by the time I got to college, even though there was no NIL, I didn't make a penny from playing college sports, coaches yelling at me and saying all of this same stuff. And hey, if you're not good enough, then you need to get out of here. That was just normal to me. Like, what else are you supposed to expect in life?
No, and Blaine, nobody is forcing anybody to play. Nobody's forcing anybody. I remember when coaches used to gray shirt guys and blue shirt guys just to be able to have extra guys on the roster, and all of a sudden you get cut. I didn't see anybody crying when Nick Saban was doing that like they're doing with Deion Sanders. I'm not the biggest Deion Sanders fan in the world, but I mean, literally, and I'll read the quote. This is Xavier Smith, right, who transferred from Colorado to Austin Peay. All right, it's not like he transferred to, another Power 5 or something like that. He said, I was actually getting mad, like tears coming from my eyes, because, bro, you never even tried to get to know me. He was destroying guys' confidence and belief in themselves. The way he did it, it could have been done with a little more compassion. Look, I don't know Xavier Smith, but, buddy, you better toughen your ass up, or this world's going to chew you up and spit you out like you were never there.
Where do you think you are? Like, I don't even know how you made it to this point. How would you get baby through middle school and high school? Deion Sanders is doing you a favor. And sometimes back in the day, you wouldn't even get this favor.
No.
You wouldn't even get talked to. You would just slowly walk your way through maybe 2 years and then go. If you're not good enough, and he knows it, he's giving you an outlet to go play the sport that you love.
Yeah, thanks for telling
me this. Now I don't have to waste 2 years working my ass off when I know I'm not good enough to make it. If anything, this is a good thing from Deion Sanders, and it is a coach's job to know the finesse of both ways. Know how to beat a guy down, but also bring him up. What is the hell on the field, heaven off of it? It's a good mix, and the best one knows how to do it. But how many times has Nick Saban said this to a guy? How many times has Kirby Smart said this to a guy? It's not as blown up, obvious, because it's not Deion Sanders. But I don't think this is a bad look from Deion whatsoever.
I don't think it is at all. Now, Shadur, what he said is a totally different situation.
What did he say?
Defending his dad, basically put out on social media, and this is just. It's just not a smart business decision. The kid said what he did about Deion Sanders, right? And then Shadur came out and said, well, I can't even remember him. He was mid at best.
Yeah.
And listen, just because you think something doesn't mean you should tweet it. All I heard last week was Spencer Rattler dropped to the 5th round of the draft because of a documentary that came out when he was 17. Well, I want y'all to keep that same energy with Shadur Sanders then, if you're an NFL scout, with him coming out and saying this about another player. Listen, it's probably the truth, to be honest with you, but it's a bad business decision. If I'm somebody that's thinking about drafting Shadur Sanders, I know he's talented, but I'm worried about the people around him that are facilitating him and giving him business advice, because this was just a bad strategy.
Caleb Williams effect, right?
Yeah.
How much does your talent outweigh your attitude?
Yeah, and that's a question. That's a question as old as time when it comes to guys who've had a lot of success in the sports arena. And especially when you're talking about paying them tens of millions of dollars to go to the professional level. Another thing to consider when a coach tells a guy, hey, you're not playing good enough, you should transfer. A lot of times that is just motivation to get them to play better. Oftentimes a coach will be saying that not because they want the player to actually transfer and leave, but hey, I need to do whatever I can to make this kid understand that he's not performing, and I'll stop saying those things when he does start performing up to the standard that we're trying to set here, especially a new coach at a new place.
And listen, some people accuse me of bias here, but I think Bruce Pearl has one of the best quotes when it comes to this. He tells his own players, it's my job to out-recruit you. It's my job to keep recruiting better and better and better players. And if you know that up front, it's one thing to be like, hey, listen, David, sit down, man. I don't think you're good enough to play here. I think if you really want an opportunity to play and to have an impact, you probably need to transfer somewhere else. I'm not going to tell you where. I'll help you and do as much as I can to get you to a place where you can play, as opposed to, hey, David, sit down. Listen, I know how good you are. I know how good you can be. But if you don't start performing to the level and reaching your potential, then there's not going to be a spot for you here eventually. To me, that there is nuanced ways to handle it, right? And Prime can be a little bit brash, I guess is the right word. But I would much rather, at the end of the day, have a coach that comes up to me and says, hey, before we get this started, man, you probably need to transfer, right? As opposed to being like, hey, get the other coaches around. We're going to tell this kid that he's good enough just so we have a good third stringer, right? That we don't have to give a bunch of practice reps. I've seen coaches do that too. So at least Prime is taking the high road in that sense.
Well, all of those, fake conversations you were just having with me, I had those conversations for real with a lot of different coaches, right? Like there's multiple things to consider, especially when you're not the starting player and what school would be best. And luckily, I was fortunate to play for a lot of great coaches who I felt like did have my back as a person, but also their job depends on them having successful football players that win football games. One thing with Deion Sanders specifically, everyone listening to this right now grew up in a hometown where there was a guy who was the recreational coach of a baseball team or a football team who was a really great athlete himself.
Maybe did
and
both.
He has a son, and he wants to coach his son, okay? And he wants his son to be the starting quarterback, and he wants his son to be the starting pitcher. He doesn't really care about the other players on the team. He may not know their name, and guess what? In 5 years, when his kid's not playing rec league anymore because he's moved on to middle school or high school, he's not a little league coach anymore. I feel like that's Deion Sanders just on a seismic scale right now. These kids are going to go to the NFL. I don't think it's a coincidence that Deion Sanders just started coaching college football randomly right when his kids get a chance to play. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he coaches for a long time, but I just don't think in this particular situation that they won one game before he got there.
Yeah.
Like, you resetting the culture is a large part of what your responsibility is. I don't care for the way he goes about a lot of things in doing that, but at the same time, they got to get going now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we want to know what you think. Going to get to the Booster Club here in 1 second. Got a great show for you today.
And hit that like, hit that subscribe button if you donate and it's on topic. It will get read. If you're having a problem with donations right now, let me know. Send something in the chat and we'll try to work on it on our end. We're going to start off with Buffalo Ben. Buffalo Ben, what is up? Said, loving the show, fellas. Appreciate it, Ben. Says, do you think the culture at Colorado is toxic?
I'm not ready to say that. I think the things that go on behind the scenes are kind of blown up at Colorado. It's all out in the media. I mean, there's stuff like this that goes on at every place that you never hear about. But that's what Deion Sanders wanted, right? Deion Sanders, and I'm not saying he wanted to turn Colorado into a reality show, but I think the access and the transparency of what's going on in the locker room and around the facility at Colorado is a lot more prominent in the media than any other place. There's a reason that coaches like to keep in-house things in-house, right? It eliminates distractions. Deion's kind of going the opposite way with that. I mean, hell, there's a show based on him being the coach at Colorado. So the word toxic, to me, we're not far enough along the Coach Prime journey in Boulder yet for me to say, listen, this is not going to work. It's a problem, whatever. This kind of reminds me of the old MTV show, Two-A-Days, with Rush Probst, where you get into the cameras are in the locker room. They're in the meeting rooms. At other places, all you do is see really the good stuff, right? Or maybe the pregame speech from Dan Lanning, or you see these long, kind of dramatic highlight films during the season of what's going on, or guys, busting their ass at practice or during summer workouts or doing charitable work. At Colorado, you see the whole meal, the good food and the bad food. So I think it can kind of give you a warped sense of what's going on. I've got to see how they perform on the field after what they did last year, where they did win 4 games. It kind of fell off a cliff. The only way I can make that judgment is I've got to see how that athletic team, staff, administration reacts when it's going bad, when the expectations are raised high. That's when I'll be able to make that determination. I just can't do that yet.
That's a good point, though, that's what Deion Sanders wanted.
I think it's what he
wanted to gain an edge by using the reality show element at Colorado for PR and marketing. I mean, no one markets better than this guy.
Hollywood.
Well, there's always a negative side of that, right? Like, it's a double-edged sword. You're talking about Two-A-Days, kind of like Hard Knocks, too. A lot of NFL coaches say, we don't want Hard Knocks to be
exactly
here.
right.
Like, that's a distraction. Imagine if Coach Sanders was a head coach in the NFL. Like, he'd be begging for Hard Knocks to come there because he would get PR and marketing value out of it. Well, then they're also going to see every single guy you cut and every single negative thing that goes on in the locker room. And people are going to talk about that and write stories just about how they do the positives.
Yeah, well, it's like that one married couple that they go out in public and they just look like they love each other. Like they're perfect. They're a match made in heaven. Go to church, go to the grocery store, they're laughing, picking through the fruits. Like, what should we eat tonight, honey? Then all of a sudden, there's like some ugly divorce that takes 2 years. They're fighting over the kids. You weren't in the house when nobody was there. You weren't seeing the arguments. You weren't seeing the way they treated each other when other eyes weren't on them. So it's kind of in that same realm a little.
You weren't seeing them watch all the Netflix shows while you were asleep.
Yeah, watching Baby Reindeer and panicking together.
I've only heard terrible things.
Well, I thought it was there's a couple episodes where it was a little bit too much for me. But
it's not a movie?
No, it's a show on Netflix. It's wild, David. It's wild. What's up, YouTube? Hey, do us a favor, man. You're stopping by, hit that subscribe button. We'd really, really appreciate it. If you want to turn that notification bell on, it lets you know whenever we drop content and the sports world never stops spinning. So you might as well come walk with us.